Hello everyone. In the last video of art history, we discussed about the methods that art historians used in early ages. Today we will talk about the 20th century onwards.
But before that, don't forget to hit the like button if you appreciate this video. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon near it to increase your knowledge and to remain updated. And do share the video if you would like to share this knowledge with others.
Our 21st century understanding of the symbolic content of art comes from a group of scholars who gathered in Hamburg in the 1920s. The most prominent among them were Erwin Panofsky, Aby Warburg, and Fritz Saxl. Together they developed much of the vocabulary that continues to be used in the 21st century by art historians. Iconography, with roots meaning symbols from writing, refers to art derived from written sources, especially scripture and mythology. Iconology is referred to symbolism, whether derived from a specific text. Today, art historians sometimes use these terms interchangeably. Panofsky, in his early work, also developed the theories of Regel, but became eventually more preoccupied with iconography, and in particular with the transmission of themes related to classical antiquity in the Middle Ages and Renaissance. In this respect, his interests coincided with those of Warburg, the son of the wealthy family who had assembled an impressive library in Hamburg, devoted to the study of the classical tradition in later art and culture. Under Saxl's auspices, this library was developed into a research institute affiliated with the University of Hamburg, where Panofsky taught. Warburg died in 1929, and in the 1930s, Saxl and Panofsky, both Jewish, were forced to leave Hamburg. Saxl settled in London, bringing Warburg's library with him, and established the Warburg Institute. Panofsky settled in Princeton at the Institute for Advanced Study. In this respect, they were part of an extraordinary influx of German art historians into the English-speaking academy in the 1930s. These scholars were largely responsible for establishing art history as a legitimate field of study in the English-speaking world, and the influence of Panofsky's methodology in particular determined the course of American art history for a generation. Heinrich Wölfflin was not the only scholar to invoke psychological theories in the study of art. Psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud wrote a book on the artist Leonardo da Vinci, in which he used Leonardo's paintings to interrogate the artist's psyche and sexual orientation. Freud inferred from his analysis that Leonardo was probably homosexual. One of the best known psychoanalytic scholars is Laurie Schneider Adams, who wrote a popular textbook, Art Across Time, and a book, Art and Psychoanalysis. An unsuspecting turn for the history of art criticism came in 1914 when Sigmund Freud published a psychoanalytical interpretation of Michelangelo's Moses titled The Moses de Michelangelo as one of the first psychology-based analyses on a work of art. Freud first published this work shortly after reading Vasari's Lives. For unknown purposes, Freud originally published the article anonymously. Carl Jung also applied Psychoanalytical Theory to Art. C. Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist, an influential thinker, and founder of analytical psychology. Jung's approach to psychology emphasized understanding the psyche through exploring the worlds of dreams, art, mythology, world religion, and philosophy. Much of his life's work was spent exploring Eastern and Western philosophy, alchemy, astrology, sociology, as well as literature and the arts. His most noble contributions include his concept of the psychological archetype, the collective unconsciousness, and his theory of synchronicity. Jung believed that many experiences perceived as coincidence were not merely due to chance. He argued that a collective unconsciousness and archetypal imagery were detectable in art. His ideas were particularly popular among American abstract expressionists in the 1940s and 1950s. His work inspired the surrealist concept of drawing imagery from dreams and the unconsciousness. Jung emphasized the importance of balance and harmony. He cautioned that modern humans rely too heavily on science and logic and would benefit from integrating spirituality and appreciation of the unconsciousness realm. His work not only triggered analytical work by art historians, but it became an integral part of art making. Jackson Pollock, for example, famously created a series of drawings to accompany his psychoanalytical sessions with his Jungian psychoanalyst, Dr. Joseph Henderson. Henderson, who later published the drawings in a text devoted to Pollock's sessions, realized how powerful the drawings were as a therapeutic tool. The prominent feminist art historian Griselda Pollock, for example, draws upon psychoanalysis both in her reading into contemporary art and in her rereading of modernist art. Feminist theory written in the fields of French feminism and psychoanalysis has strongly informed the reframing of both men and women artists in art history. With Griselda's reading of French feminist psychoanalysis, and in particular the writings of Julia Kristeva and Barbara Enteniger, during the mid-20th century, art historians embraced social history by using critical approaches. The goal was to show how art interacts with power structures in society. One critical approach that art historians used was Marxism. Marxist art history attempted to show how art was tied to specific classes, how images contain information about the economy, and how images can make the status quo seem natural. Martial Duchamp and Dada movement jump-started the anti-art style. Various artists did not want to create artwork that everyone was conforming to at that time. These two movements helped other artists to create pieces that were not viewed as traditional art. Some examples of styles that branched off the anti-art movement would be Neo-Dadaism, Surrealism, and Constructivism. These styles and artists did not want to surrender to traditional ways of art. This way of thinking provoked political movements such as the Russian Revolution and the communist ideals. Artist Isaak Brodsky, work of art, Shock Worker from Troy in 1932, show his political involvement within art. This piece of art can be analyzed to show the internal troubles Soviet Russia was experiencing at that time. Perhaps the best known Marxist was Clement Greenberg, who came to prominence during the late 1930s with his essay Avant-Garde and Kitsch. In the essay, Greenberg claimed that the avant-garde arose in order to defend aesthetic standards from the decline of taste involved in consumer society and seeing kitsch and art as opposites. Greenberg further claimed that avant-garde and modernist art was a means to resist the leveling of culture produced by capitalist propaganda. Greenberg appropriated the German word kitsch to describe their consumerism. Greenberg later became well known for examining the formal properties of modern art. Meyer Schapiro. Meyer is one of the best remembered Marxist art historians of mid-20th century. Although he wrote about numerous time periods and themes in art history, he is best remembered for his commentary on sculpture from the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance, at which time he saw evidence of capitalism emerging and feudalism declining. Arnold Hauser wrote the first Marxist survey of Western art entitled The Social History of Art. He attempted to show how class consciousness was reflected in major art periods. The book was controversial when published during the 1950s, since it makes generalizations about entire eras, a strategy now called vulgar Marxism. Linda Nochlund's essay, Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists?, helped to ignite feminist art history during the 1970s and remains one of the most widely read essays about female artists. This was then followed by a 1972 College Art Association panel chaired by Nochlund entitled Eroticism and the Image of Women in 19th-Century Art. In her pioneering essay, Nochlund applies a feminist critical framework to show systematic exclusion of women from art training. While feminist art history can focus on any time period and location, much attention has been given to the modern era. Some of this scholarship centers on the feminist art movement, which referred specially to the experience of women. Often, feminist art history offers a critical rereading on the Western art canon, such as Carol Duncan's reinterpretation of Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Two pioneers of the field are Mary Garrard and Norma Broad. Their anthologies, Feminism and Art History, Questioning the Litany, The Expanding Discourse, Feminism and Art History, and Reclaiming Feminist Agency, Feminist Art History After Postmodernism, are substantial efforts to bring feminist perspectives into the discourse of art history. The pair also co-founded the Feminist Art History Conference. As opposed to iconography, which seeks to identify meaning, semiotics is concerned with how meaning is created. Roland Barthes' connoted and denoted meanings are paramount to this examination. In any particular work of art, an interpretation depends on the identification of denoted, meaning the recognition of a visual sign, and the connoted, meaning the instant cultural associations
that come with recognition. The main concern of the semiotic art historian is to come up with ways to navigate and interpret connoted meaning. Semiotic art history seeks to uncover the codified meaning or meanings in an aesthetic object by examining its connectedness to a collective consciousness. Art history do not commonly commit to any particular brand or semiotics, but rather construct an amalgamated version which they incorporate into their collection of analytical tools. For example, Meyer Schapiro borrowed Saussure's differential meaning in effort to read signs as they exist within a system. According to Schapiro, to understand the meaning of frontality in a specific pictorial context, it must be differentiated from or viewed in relation to alternate possibilities such as a profile or three-quarter view. Schapiro combined this method with the work of Charles Sanders Peirce, whose object sign and interpretant provided a structure of his approach. Alex Potts demonstrates the application of Peirce's concepts to visual representation by examining them in relation to the Mona Lisa. By seeing the Mona Lisa, for example, as something beyond its materiality is to identify it as a sign. It is then recognized as referring to an object outside of itself, a woman or Mona Lisa. The image does not seem to denote religious meaning and can therefore be assumed to be a portrait. This interpretation leads to a chain of possible interpretations. Who was the sitter in relation to Leonardo da Vinci? What significance did she have to him? Or maybe she is an icon for all of womankind. This chain of interpretation or unlimited semiosis is endless. The art historian's job is to place boundaries on possible interpretation as much as it is to reveal the new possibilities. Semiotics operates under the theory that an image can only be understood from the viewer's perspective. Rosalind Krauss adopted this concept in her essay In the Name of Picasso. She denounced the artist's monopoly on meaning and insisted that meaning can only be derived after the work has been removed from its historical and social context. Mieke Bal argued similarly that meaning does not even exist until the image is observed by the viewer. It is only after acknowledging this that meaning can become opened up to other possibilities such as feminism or psychoanalysis. Now let's move on to the most recent time. Scientific advances have made possible much more accurate investigation of the materials and techniques used to create artworks, especially infrared and X-ray photographic techniques, which have allowed many underdrawings of paintings to be seen again. Proper analysis of pigments used in paint is now possible. Dendrochronology for panel paintings and radiocarbon dating for old objects in organic material have allowed scientific methods of dating objects to confirm or upset dates derived from stylistic analysis or documentary evidence. The development of good color photography, now held digitally and is available on the internet or by other means, has transformed the study of many types of art, especially those covering the objects existing in large numbers, which are widely dispersed among collections, such as illuminated manuscripts and Persian miniatures,
and many types of archaeological artworks. Concurrent to those technological advances, art historians have shown increasing interest in neo-theoretical approaches to the nature of artworks as objects. Thing theory, actor network theory, and object-oriented ontology have played an increasing role in art historical literature. That's all for today. Now, if you want to learn something more particular, mention it in the comment below, and I look forward to share the information with you. Thank you.